Hello, 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 good people, and welcome to Happy, Healthy, Whole with Sharea. This is our Wednesday wisdom for our Practice Well path for those who are looking to grow clarity, strategy, and confidence in a thriving private practice as therapists and coaches or consultants. This is going to be a 4-week series again for us to kind of just talk through some things that will help you to either maintain, grow, or scale your practice. So week one, we're going to talk about laying out the foundation and why it's important for you to know your why and your niche. And we've talked about this several times, but can't reinforce it more now than ever as the world is ever changing with a lot of mental health concerns related to the turbulence times that we're about to navigate. And so I'm going to try to help us to think about whether you're just launching or looking to expand. One thing that we need to know is how clear are we? We need to have a strong foundation, especially as we are walking into, if this is a new practice, a ever turbulent world around mental health. Today, we're going to talk about your why and your niche. These are two essential elements that will keep you focused, aligned, and profitable. So let's talk number one, which is the power of the why. Right now, there is so many things going on in our world, and in the challenging times like this, your why is going to keep you from trying to be in every place at one time and really focus you into your deeper understanding and your connection to impact and not just money. Your why is so much deeper than money or even being your own boss. It's almost like this way that we really kind of connect our practices to our values. And so it's important for you to ask yourself some questions when it comes to finding your why. Why did I choose to become a mental health professional? Will be the first thing that you want to think about as you are trying to think on what your why is for your practice. And you can do this even if you already have a current practice and are thinking about scaling or growing into other areas. Then the second thing you're going to think about, who am I truly passionate about serving? And the last thing you're going to think about is what changes do I want to make in my own clients or my community? Your why fuels the sense of urgency as well as your resilience when you think about things when it's getting hard or when you don't trust some of the systems or when you literally are starting and trying to figure out where to go next. When you build a practice on a mission-driven foundation, you are more likely to attract the right clients from the start, stay committed, and prevent burnout. So, three major elements as to why your why matters. All right, so I'm going to go back for just a second. And once you know your why, the next step is finding your niche. But before we do that, I want to go back and answer those questions for examples for those who may kind of be like, well, what does that even mean? So, why did I choose to become a mental health professional? For me personally, it was about being able to impact Black and Brown women, specifically Black and Brown women from communities that um, are largely impacted by environmental trauma and or community trauma that they may deal with and navigate even outside of their homes. And so when I started, my why for the mental health was to be able to navigate that population, but also on top of that was to understand how mental illness looked different based off of your cultural identity and how important it is to know that culture does have impact on how we even define mental health and mental illness. And so that was my chosen area and reason for getting into mental health as a profession and really being a mental health professional. The next question is, who am I truly passionate about and serving? And what I started off was very much about community. And I didn't really clearly define that. I defined that as Black community. And so when my business first started, the reality was that I even needed to be more narrow there. And so it really became that I was passionate about Black women and their families and being able to impact them in a way that allows them to deal with unresolved trauma and have a thriving life that allows them to feel loved, connected, and rested. And so that was like, who am I truly passionate about? And then what changes do I see in my clients and community, or want to see in my clients or in community? The answer to that one is simple. What I said at the end, being able to see and recognize that they can thrive, feel love, receive love, and give love, as well as have true impact in their homes that allow them to thrive, while at the same time taking into consideration their wholeness. And that includes rest. And so those were my things that I wanted to see my clients and my community really feel an impact. And so that's how I got to my why, which for me, very simple. When I think of it quickly, it's about family and community, being able to impact the Black families and the community that I represent, as well as am a part of. And so that became my why. And so when we think about finding our own niche, that why is going to be the first part, and finding how am I going to really maintain this practice without burning out. The next thing is really going to be about finding your niche. And if we're honest, today it is very crowded in mental health profession, regardless of the angle in which you work. But specifically, when we think about therapists, being a general therapist right now is not going to be enough to sustain a reputation and a identity that will attract your ideal clients. And so, because this isn't enough, you need to find things that will help you to stand out. Things like your life experience and your strengths, the problems that you best equipped to solve, the population that you are uniquely here to serve, and your approach to those serving, right? And so I do a training for mental health professionals on clinical work with Black female clients. And what I talk about in there is being able to incorporate not just your experience and your strengths as maybe a Black woman or a Black female therapist, but also being able to identify what strength looks like outside of the cultural stereotypes that even us as Black therapists can sometimes align with, related to resilience and how it's defined. And so I talk about that from the perspective of how do I adjust my cultural awareness so that I'm also being clear that my client needs a certain cultural assistance, but I'm also not putting more burden on them to just be strong, to just get through. And so that becomes this angle of why my niche is so unique. The problems that I'm best to equip is just that. I'm able to see a Black woman's whole experience and then connect it to that individual Black woman's experience, because they're not all the same. Understanding that is about really having your clinical skills. And I cannot stress enough continuing education, having those clinical skills that allow for you to know, if I'm going to work with depression, I might use CBT, but how do I adapt that cultural approach to CBT for my Black female clients? That's going to be my unique kind of spend on this thing. And then I'm going to think about it also with the populations, right? And so when I said earlier, I said Black women and families, being able to incorporate family systems and being able to do it with a way to look at culture and identity is my unique approach, right? And so there becomes my niche, and that becomes my way to kind of navigate my practice, but also to market my practice clearly to who hears me and sees me as someone that they would want to be served by. So when I think about kind of clarifying this in a one statement summary so that my clients can clearly know who I work with, my example is I provide therapy for anxiety and depression. That's not enough, right? Because that's general. Anybody can say that. That example really doesn't give me any clarity on who I'm actually servicing. But for my specific niche, and my example is using me, so you can kind of do this for your own homework around your own niche, is I help high achieving Black women navigate trauma and self-worth through cultural affirming lens. And so that's going to tell my audience who I actually approach or who I actually work with. And if you see the difference, what you notice is that a clear niche makes it easier for the right client to find themselves in the service that you're going to provide. And it makes it easier for me to market, knowing things like colors, backgrounds, so many things when it comes to actually working to maintain your foundation of your practice. So your homework this week is to write down your why and to craft a niche statement that clearly defines who you serve and how you help them. Post it somewhere somewhere visible and reflected when you're when you're thinking about how difficult the times are or how bad things are getting in our own lens of the world right now, it helps me to remember that I have purpose and that my community can be impacted by my hard work as well as my rest. All right, because I'm also one of those high achieving Black women who need to do the same thing that I advocate for my clients. That being said, next week we're going to talk about building a sustainable business model that actually works for you, and being able to do that with your level of either building, starting, or expanding your business. All right, y'all be well. Again, this is Wednesday Wisdom. If you haven't already, like and subscribe to our channel, and I will see you next week. Be well.